Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 30, Deep in its Clutches. After Zhongli Qian watched Zhongli Kuang's soul and puppet body left, his tense expression relaxed slightly. The fact that he didn't like his younger brother had nothing to do with his parentage but purely due to his personality. Now that he was returned, whether the Zhongli clan wanted to save him or send him on to his next life was no longer Zhongli Qian's business. Seeing as you're a magnanimous person, this Venerable One won't try to deceive you, said Wenren-he. This Venerable One is Wenren-he of Xianyuan sect. So, it is Lord Wenren-he, Zhongli Qian said in shock, and quickly cupped his hands in greeting. 12 years ago, when Sir Wenren battled with the 21 experts of the righteous sects, you became the strongest person in the cultivation world. Though we walk different paths, I have deep admiration for you, and wish to offer thanks on the behalf of all those living in the mundane world. The Zhongli clan was not allied to either the righteous sects or the demonic sects and was thus considered a neutral party. A major event like the Great Sect War had of course been much talked about among the 4 great cultivation clans. Those who understood the ways of the heaven naturally realized that both the righteous and demonic side's goal was to avoid a 10,000-year great calamity. And the ease with which the demonic cultivators had broken the spirit-severing array 2 years ago allowed many to understand Wenren-he's true intentions. The rise of the cultivation clans was related to Wenren-he's actions, and since they weren't affiliated with those righteous sects, they were grateful to him. Zhongli Qian spoke with sincerity with not a hint of pretense in his words. Xu Yanyan couldn't help but glance at Wenren-he. She couldn't understand why he was interested in Zhongli Qian. Xianyuan sect had no connections to the cultivation clans nor any grudge. Moreover, Wenren-he wasn't someone who would mistreat innocents. He might not have any intentions of killing Zhongli Qian, but was he holding him for some deeper intentions? You have a good character and this Venerable One doesn't intend to harm you, Wenren-he said. This Venerable One just wants to keep you as a guest at Xianyuan sect for a few days. I am a reasonable man, who does not wish to pressure others. You can choose to be our guest standing up, or lying down. Zhongli Qian stared for a moment. Knowing that the 3 before him were demonic cultivators, and seeing how mercilessly they had treated Zhongli Kuang, he had never expected he would be allowed to live. If there was even a single ray of hope, Zhongli Qian would fight with all his strength, but considering Wenren-he's might, the combined strength of the whole Zhongli clan might not be enough, let alone Zhongli Qian himself. This one of course hopes to be Xianyuan sect's guest in good health, Zhongli Qian answered. Well spoken. Wenren-he nodded in satisfaction. Come then. Right Protector, watch over young Master Zhongli along the way. If he didn't make it to the Xianyuan sect, this Venerable One will feed your nascent soul to the beasts living on the mountain. He spoke seriously without a hint of jest, then left with Yin Hanjiang to Xianyuan sect. He was not afraid that Zhongli Qian would try to escape, having been left alone with Xu Yanyan. Tears flowed down Xu Yanyan's face as she spoke to Zhongli Qian. Young Master Zhongli, you don't need to worry. I'm still the Xianyuan sect's right protector. Even if there are mountains of people who can replace me, the Venerable One might not necessarily turn me into dog food. She cried like a rain-drenched flower as she continued, I'm also reluctant to bring an upstanding young man like you to Xianyuan sect to be tormented by that devil. If you were to escape along the way, I'll make sure to turn a blind eye. Even if he feeds me to dogs later, you mustn't blame yourself. Zhongli Qian. He was a gentleman, not a foolish man. Wenren-he had spoken to Xu Yanyan for his benefit so he wouldn't try to escape. He also understood that Wenren-he wouldn't speak empty words. The devil Venerable held no mercy in his eyes, and though he looked upon his left protector Yin Hanjiang with endless lenience, he really would feed Xu Yanyan to the beasts. There's no need for right protector Xu to worry, said Zhongli Qian. I won't try to escape. Since Sir Wenren genuinely wishes for me to be his guest, escaping would bring trouble to the entire Five Willow Manor. As he doesn't intend to kill me immediately, I assume that he needs me to do something. As for what it was or whether it would violate Zhongli Qian's principles, he decided to not think about it for the meanwhile and just deal with things as they came. Xu Yanyan's tears stopped all at once. She wiped them away with a handkerchief and said seriously, "I thought scholars were all brain dead, but you're actually pretty sharp." Zhongli Qian bowed and said, "This one also thanks Protector Xu for her trust." "Huh? What for?" Xu Yanyan raised an eyebrow. "Protector Xu may have been putting on an act, but you didn't try to hide it. The fact that you trusted that I wouldn't try to escape meant you trusted my character. Naturally, this one should thank you." Xu Yanyan stared at him, and shook her head with a sigh. "It's best that I can't have you." Zhongli Qian. After their conversation, they made their way smoothly back to Xianyuan sect. Currently, all the workers at the main hall were Xu Yanyan's subordinates. All manner of beautiful men were tidying up around the place and was not allowed to use spiritual energy. When they saw that Xu Yanyan had brought home an even better looking man and not a type she'd ever touched before, they suddenly felt anxious. Her subordinate surnamed Helion approached and threw an arm around her waist, gazing at her tenderly. "Protector, it's been so long. This subordinate has missed you." Xu Yanyan took a book from her lapel and pressed it to his chest. "Go read some books and cultivate your character." After taking Zhongli Qian to a guest room, she went to see Wenren. By this time, Wenren had already explained Zhongli Qian's relationship to Bailey Qingmiao in the book to Yin Hanjiang. What this Venerable One was thinking is to make Bailey Qingmiao owe enough debts of gratitude to Zhongli Qian to cancel out the karma from her divine tribulation from the previous life. Then I'll send her to the reincarnation cycle and have Zhongli Qian find her reincarnation to raise her into adulthood. That way, she would forget about He Wenzhao for good. Yin Hanjiang didn't think there was anything wrong with this plan and praised, "The Venerable One is wise." It wasn't actually his idea, and Wenren didn't like taking credit for other people's work. So, he waved a hand and said, "This Venerable One thought of it based on Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Qiu's words." Hall Master Yuan said that Bailey Qingmiao's affections should be diverted to someone else, and Hall Master Qiu once told Bailey Qingmiao she could kill He Wenzhao and wait for his reincarnation. This Venerable One believes that Bailey Qingmiao may be beyond saving in this life, so we'll just put our hopes on her next life. Hearing this idea of diverting one's affection gave Yin Hanjiang a pause. After some thought, he said, "Affections that run deep enough can persist even after reincarnation. It's possible that even Mengpo soup won't be able to erase Bailey Qingmiao's obsession." "Is that so?" Wenren glanced at Yin Hanjiang. "It would be for me," Yin Hanjiang said resolutely. After some thought, Wenren said, "Well, this is troublesome. But we should still try it. Let's start from planning out Zhongli Qian and Bailey Qingmiao's meeting." Yin Hanjiang would still be doing all he could to make things easier for Wenren. In order to confirm the plan with him, he asked, "Because of the Venerable One's actions, Bailey Qingmiao and Zhongli Qian's first meeting will now be far different than what was destined. Will Zhongli Qian really fall for her again?" An awkward silence suddenly fell over the room. After some time, Wenren slowly spoke, "This Venerable One seems to have overlooked that." Right then, Xu Yanyan arrived to ask what she should do with the newly settled in Zhongli Qian. Wenren ordered her to come to the meeting room and immediately asked upon reaching there, "Protector Xu is well versed in matters of love. Do you know how to make a man fall in love with a woman?" "It depends on the man," Xu Yanyan replied. Wenren didn't beat around the bush. Zhongli Qian. Since Xu Yanyan was going to be involved in the whole plan, there was no point hiding anything from her. Hearing the man's name, Xu Yanyan brightened up and raised her head. "Venerable One, Zhongli Qian is a rare man with brains that was even sharper than I assumed. Tricks won't work against him, so we can only be overt. Have him know very well what he's getting into, but at the same time, ensure that he doesn't have any other choice. For example, If the Venerable One were to have this subordinate seduce him and also let him know that I would be punished if I failed, that could work as long as he doesn't already have a person in his heart. He wouldn't fall in love with me, though. And if he does already have someone, then no plots are going to work. This Venerable One didn't say you were the woman in question, Wenren, he said coldly. Xu Yanyan lost interest right away. She said lazily, this subordinate has never wished for love, only for pleasure. This subordinate doesn't understand that kind of deep-seated emotion. Does anyone in Xianyuan sect do? Asked Wenren he. He got no answer. Very few in Xianyuan sect cared for matters of love. After dismissing Xu Yanyan, Wenren he opened the abusive love affair. You are the only one that will remain in my heart, and reread Bailey King Miao's meeting with Zhongli Qian several times, hoping to find some inspiration. Yin Hanjiang stood quietly behind him, not looking at the book's contents and instead focusing all his attention on Wenren he. Yin Hanjiang didn't understand love either. The only strong emotions he had felt in his life were for Wenren he. It wasn't just because Wenren he had saved him before, but because Wenren he represented all of Yin Hanjiang's hopes and dreams. Venerable One, does the book say what love is? Yin Hanjiang asked. It mentions a few things, Wenren he answered as he flipped through the pages to find the part where Bailey Qingmiao was analyzing her feelings for He Wenzhao. It was when Zhongli Qian had told Bailey Qingmiao of his wishes, asking her to abandon Shangqing sect and stay by his side. She had said, I don't know what's so good about Shixing. I just know that if he was in a crowd, my eyes would pick him out instantly. If he's happy, I'm happy. If he's unhappy, then I can't bear it. I would be willing to give up everything for him and live a blissful life with him. I don't know when I started liking him either. I suppose, it's one of those loves that takes you unaware, and before you know it, you're deep in its clutches. Bailey Qingmiao smiled bitterly. I've tried to forget Shixin before. If I didn't love him, then I wouldn't need to suffer. But I couldn't do it. This is probably just my fate. Wenren he pointed out the passage to Yin Hanjiang. This is what we need. If we can accomplish these three things, Zhongli Qian should fall in love with her. He wrote them down and carefully considered each of them. The first was to pick the other person instantly out of a crowd. He could put the tracking spell on Zhongli Qian and Bailey Qingmiao. If each had the other's blood dripped into their eyes, they would only be able to see each other. The second was being happy when the other person was happy, and sad when they were sad. He could have Hall Master Miao put heart-linking parasites in them, so that wherever they were, they would always feel each other's emotions. The third one, love takes you unaware and before you know it, you're deep in its clutches, was a bit harder. He wasn't quite clear on what this actually meant. For now, he decided to focus on the first two and spent some time to ponder the third one. Having finally came up with a plan, Wenren he let out a breath. After doing this, the rest was up to the heavens' will. If Bailey Qingmiao still couldn't be changed, then he could always kill her and try again with her reincarnation. He sent word to Hall Master Shi and Hall Master Miao to tell them to prepare the spell and parasite goo. Then he messaged Qiu Kongxiu, telling her to get Bailey Qingmiao to Xianyuan sect sometime soon. Yin Hanjiang picked up the piece of paper with Wenren he's notes. After reading it, his fingertips began to tremble. He stole a glance at Wenren he's back and read to himself the final line, love takes you unaware and before you know it, you're deep in its clutches. End chapter. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 31, Happy Marriage. Zhongli Qian was prepared to be tortured every which way by Xianyuan sect, to be forced to do things that violated his morals, and maybe even lose his life and soul. He had already decided that, no matter what Wenren he did to him, he'd choose a path that would not compromise his Dao. On his second day at Xianyuan sect though, he was taken to the Hellfire Pavilion. He hadn't seen Wenren he even once in that time. Xu Yanyan handed him over to a pale and sickly-looking man whom she called Hall Master Shi. He was apparently the new master of the Hellfire Pavilion. "Do you seriously want to take him in my area?" asked Hall Master Shi, coughing harshly. "Cough, cough, the Hellfire Pavilion is under Ghost Peak. I'm too scared to go there myself and you want me to take him there? No way. You're the master of Hellfire Pavilion. You can't even handle your own territory, yet you tried to compete for the position of sect master with the other hall masters. What were you thinking?" Xu Yanyan was experienced at reading people, but she now realized that she still hadn't figured out this previously unknown subordinate of Qiu Kongxiu's. "Cough, cough, it's because I'm scared to go back there that I went with Hall Master Yuan's plan to sabotage Hall Master Miao and Hall Master Ruan." Hall Master Shi's face turned paler. "With my power and status, how could I become the devil Venerable? I just have a tiny wish, which is just to change halls. I didn't think it would turn out to be such a mess." Cough, cough, cough. He hacked out a couple of bugs. They were Hall Master Miao's goo insects, which had been put in him as punishment. "You even killed Hall Master Miao's bugs with your sickness, so how can you be scared of the Hellfire Pavilion?" Xu Yanyan said, backing away a few steps. She was quietly glad that Wenren he had showed up before she could enjoy Hall Master Ruan and Hall Master Shi. She might have ended up catching some sort of illness. Altar Master Shi gave her a sullen glance. "Protector Xu, I heard you got along well with Altar Master Qiu. In that case, you should know what kind of subordinates she kept at the Hellfire Pavilion." "Who says I got along with Qiu Kongxiu? She was a ghost cultivator, so of course all her subordinates are ghost cultivators, aside from you." At that point, Xu Yanyan understood Hall Master Shi's problem. Hall Master Shi was only at void boundary stage, but he could even affect Mahayana stage cultivators with sickness, so he wasn't to be underestimated. No Hall Master would feel secure with him as a subordinate. But at the Hellfire Pavilion, everyone was either dead bodies or ghosts, and the one with the best preserved body was a 1,000-year-old drought zombie. So who could Hall Master Shi afflict with sickness there? How could he bring his subordinates in line? Back when the Venerable One took control of Xian Yuan sect, he visited me just once and Protector Yin came down with illness because of that. After that, he sent me to Hellfire Pavilion and claimed it was for the unity of the sect. Hall Master Shi wiped away some fake tears. "After becoming a Hall Master, I went through a lot of trouble to force a couple of injured ghost cultivators who were at body unity stage and under into obedience. Now, because of the Venerable One's orders, I had to send off some to dual cultivate with Hall Master Ruan. Protector Xu, does it should like I'm having it easy?" Xu Yanyan didn't speak. Hall Master Shi looked at Zhongli Qian and said, "Young Master Zhongli, you're an upstanding man and you know how they say, if you don't do crooked deeds during the day, you won't fear ghosts knocking at night. This one is counting on you to protect him in the Hellfire Pavilion, okay?" Zhongli Qian. With that, he followed Hall Master Shi Kong's into the Hellfire Pavilion under Ghost Peak. Hall Master Shi managed to find a non-haunted room to tidy up for him. Zhongli Qian couldn't tell how old the building was, but the pillars had oracle bone script written on them. Hall Master Shi had heard that Zhongli Qian liked literature, so had somehow gotten a pile of bamboo scrolls to send to him. An ominous aura surrounded the scrolls and some even had suspicious blood stains on them. On a few of them, when the date and manner of someone's death was recorded, there would be a note in the margins along the lines of, "Bullshit, I clearly didn't die that way," or "Turns out I'm only worth one line in the history books," or "History is a bunch of lies, I can't believe they wrote that I died while doing the nasty. I'm so mad I could come back to life." Zhongli Qian decided not to think too deep about who had written them. Aside from those few points, the situation wasn't too bad. Though Hall Master Shi had taken 2 drops of blood from Zhongli Qian's finger, which made him kind of worried. At the time, he had said, the 4 great cultivation clans can spread prolifically without fear of their bloodline being used to curse their core members because they all have techniques for blocking bloodline curses. You won't be able to use my blood against the Zhongli clan in any way. Hall Master Shi let out a long sigh with an anxious look on his face. Along with his sickly appearance, he looked so miserable that even with all of Zhongli Qian's resolution, he couldn't help but ask, Hall Master Shi, what is troubling you? Ah, nothing much. Just a certain person is about to return. Hall Master Shi gave Zhongli Qian a serious sideways glance. And she's human. How could she be human? Zhongli Qian. The people at Qianyuan sect were all eccentric, constantly saying things he didn't understand and didn't want to think about too deeply. Knowing his blood wouldn't harm the Zhongli clan, Zhongli Qian could relax and read books at the Hellfire Pavilion. 3 months passed like that. In that time, his only visitor was Hall Master Shi, who dropped by occasionally for chats, saying that he wanted to hang out with a human being. Wenren he hadn't actually wanted to abandon Zhongli Qian for 3 months. The Zhongli clan had already sent many requests to meet with him, which he all turned down. He didn't care to see any of them before he had accomplished his goal. Qiu Kongxiu hadn't been able to bring Bailey Qingmiao to the Hellfire Pavilion for 3 months because a major event had happened in Shangqing sect. Wenren he had read about it too, from both books, in 2 different points of view. Abusive love affair. Revised edition, recorded how Bailey Qingmiao returned cheerfully to her sect with the lotus heart, looking forward to her Shikshan finally being healed. However, upon returning, she heard disastrous news. Like in the original work, He Wenzhou had had relations with Lu Xinyi. Lu Xinyi's spiritual root had been mostly drained and she had nearly lost her life, wherein she had to be sent to the medicinal hall to recover. He Wenzhou's injury was too severe and couldn't be restored even by Lu Xinyi's sacrifice, but he did recover to foundation establishment stage. He knew that he had disrespected Lu Xinyi while injured and unconscious, and was filled with remorse that he left the sect to find a cure for her and returned back just before Bailey Qingmiao did. He didn't find any cure for Lu Xinyi but managed to raise his cultivation up to deity transformation stage. He said that he had found a cave where a great immortal dwelled and had raised his level using an elixir he had been gifted. He Wenzhou promised that since he had risen in strength, he would surely be able to find a way to heal Lu Xinyi in the future, and so he begged for another chance from the sect elders. Shangqing sect didn't have many powerful elders left, and being at deity transformation stage already put He Wenzhou among the top ranks of the cultivation world. Faced with such a rare talent, they naturally couldn't put any blame on him and overlooked the injustice done to Lu Xinyi. While He Wenzhou was in high spirits, Bailey Qingmiao returned to the sect and hadn't even managed to bring him the lotus heart when she heard what had happened in the administration hall. She started weeping on the spot and cried so hard she was nearly overcome by her inner demons, right until her master Qing Rong and elder Qingyu of the administration hall came running to comfort her. He Wenzhou had also rushed over and started explaining himself just as he had in the original story, telling her with full honesty that he had been unaware at the time, that he didn't like Lu Ximei that way and that he hoped for Bailey Qingmiao's forgiveness. He said he was ashamed to face Lu Ximei and wished for Bailey Qingmiao to join him in finding a way to heal her. He was an expert at coaxing people and Bailey Qingmiao was on the verge of falling for it like she originally had. She not only forgave He Wenzhou but ran over to the room where Lu Xinyi was recuperating, wanting to give her the 7-colored lotus heart to repay her Shikshan's debt to her. Right when she was about to mention it, Elder King Xiu, who had been flipping through Shangqing sect's rules with a frown on her face, said some words that changed everything. Why doesn't He Wenzhou marry Lu Xinyi? Everyone. She held up the rulebook and pointed out a line. It says right here that if 2 disciples of Shangqing sect both agree, they can ask the sect master for permission to become cultivation partners. Hearing this, Lu Xinyi's watery eyes fell on He Wenzhou, waiting for his answer. Bailey Qingmiao never imagined that her master would say something like this. This would destroy her future with her Shikshan. How could she accept it? Well, said Elder King Yu. Look at the specifications, King Xiu. Both parties need to be at nascent soul stage to become cultivation partners. Lu Xinyi still hasn't reached nascent soul stage. Is she still capable of it? Asked King Xiu. Everyone. King Xiu struck deep with that one comment. Lu Xinyi slumped against the wall, sobbing, "It's true, I'm useless now. I'm just a burden if I remain here, so I might as well end it all." Saying that, she attempted to strike her head against the wall, but with so many people in the room, they all rushed up to stop her. He Wenzhou managed to throw his arms around her first. With an uncomfortable look on his face, he said, but I love. He had just promised Bailey Qingmiao he would love her and only her, but now, he couldn't even say those words in front of Lu Xinyi. He could only give Bailey Qingmiao a helpless look, asking her to beg Elder King Xiu to reconsider. Seeing his expression, Bailey Qingmiao seemed to lose her mind, throwing her arms around King Xiu's waist and sobbing, "Master King Xiu, I love Shixing. If he gets married, then what about me?" "It's not like it's hopeless," King Xiu said, sweetly patting Bailey Qingmiao on the head. She pointed a finger at Lu Xinyi. "Look at her. She's not going to last for more than 10 years. You can just take her spot after she dies." Bailey Qingmiao. King Xiu's words may have been crude, but her reasoning was solid. Her exceedingly straightforward manner of thinking actually convinced the Shangqing sect elders. Since Lu Xinyi had saved He Wenzhou, he owed the rest of his life to her, and if he didn't repay her, he would eventually suffer consequences from heaven. He might as well just marry Lu Xinyi to absolve his debt and guilt. As for Bailey Qingmiao, it was as Elder King Xiu had said. Cultivators were ageless and could live for millennia, so they could wait for Lu Xinyi to die to get married if they had to. After the elders discussed this between themselves, they all agreed to hold the wedding. Bailey Qingmiao had wanted to bring out the lotus heart to give to Lu Xinyi, so she wouldn't need to marry her Shixin, but King Xiu reminded her, the lotus heart will advance her cultivation right to the deity transformation stage. She'll be even more qualified to marry He Wenzhou. After crying for a whole night, Bailey Qingmiao begged her master to let her leave, so she could avoid the wedding. She felt like she was possessed. The miracle elixir which could save Lu Shizhou was right in her storage bag, but she couldn't hand it over. She thought about spending a decade wandering the world and forgetting her troubles, and after 10 years, if Lu Xinyi was still alive, she would return and give the lotus heart to her, and at the same time finally let go of her Shixin. Right now, she couldn't bring herself to do it, so better she let fate decide. King Xiu was very much in favor of her decision, and several days before He Wenzhou and Lu Xinyi were set to get married, they left Shangqing sect together. At the foot of the mountain, Bailey Qingmiao turned back to look at its lofty peaks and, remembering that in 5 days her Shixin would be married, she was happy that at least Master King Xiu would stay by her side. The revision stopped here, so Wenren he flipped to the comments in the back. "I approve of this marriage. Congratulations to the new couple. Ha 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 ha. King Xiu's thought process is killing me. How can she say Lu Xinyi is only gonna live 10 years with a straight face? Masterfully done. Now that he's married to Lu Xinyi, we'll see if He Wenzhou has the face to marry the Xiling Pavilion master." In the original he had the right to because he was single as well as the future sect master of Shangqing sect, but now, well, I'm looking forward to what happens next. He can have them both and make one his concubine, ha 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 ha. Keep revising, author, I'm rooting for you. Never thought I'd follow a revision of this old trashy story so intensely. I believe you can strike gold again, author. Pleased, Wenren he set the book down and picked up The God of Destruction, Volume 1. The events were about the same as in Abusive Love Affair. Revised edition, and just expanded on how, when He Wenzhou had left the mountain, he had found a powerful relic with the help of his master who was the Blood Demon Elder, and raised his cultivation stage with it. The events after he returned to the sect were the same, but the reviews were wildly different. Why is this being revised? It was perfectly good as it was, so why does it need a revision? I'm so confused. Probably censorship, they won't let the MC have a harem. A lot of other authors have revised. That's all understandable, but, what's with this plotline? If Zhao Ji can have all the beauties, then I quite like Lu Xinyi. But if it's only her, then she's just too mediocre. Not as talented as Little Shimei, not as smart as the Xiling Pavilion Master. Even her looks are just average. Even if he can have all of them, his main wife shouldn't be Lu Xinyi. She just can't compare, she's not worth the MC at all. Is that new wandering immortal elder Qing a villain? Back then I thought she was Zhao Ji's new wife. I hate Qing the most out of the female characters, aside from the demonic cultivator Xu Yanyan. The author is really talented to be able to make these two beautiful girls this vicious. The difference in the reviews was like night and day. After comparing them, Wenren he decided that he preferred the abusive love affair. Revised edition, S discussion page. The comments seemed more normal there. Venerable 1, Qiu Kongxiu has returned, Yin Hanjiang said outside the door. Yin Hanjiang hadn't been sticking as close to Wenren he lately. Typically, if Wenren he didn't shoo him away, he'd always stand behind him, even in his room. He didn't know when Yin Hanjiang had started staying outside his room and standing guard by the door instead. What about Bailey Qingmiao? Wenren he asked. Her blood has been taken and she's been sent to the Hellfire Pavilion, Yin Hanjiang said outside. Hall Master Qiu and Protector Shu have started fighting in the main hall. Should something be done about them? Wenren he opened the door. Yin Hanjiang, who had been standing right next to it, lurched back several steps to put distance between them. Wenren he gave him an odd look, but before he could ask, he heard the sound of smashing rocks outside. His expression immediately turned cold and he said, "Come with this Venerable 1. End chapter. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 32, Shi Kongxin's God. The reason for the current fight between Xu Yanyan and Qiu Kongxiu was unusually simple. After dropping Bailey Qingmiao off at the Hellfire Pavilion, Qing Kongxiu went to the main hall to report for duty, where she bumped into Xu Yanyan. Xu Yanyan hadn't known that Qiu Kongxiu was still alive and stared at her for a long time, unable to take her eyes away. Now that Qiu Kongxiu was a wandering immortal, her whole body was restored under her black robe and had lost her eerie rack of white bones and the bloodthirsty ghosts she'd kept around, so she was a little self-conscious. She had even avoided all her subordinates at the Hellfire Pavilion as she was afraid that her reputation as a ghost cultivator would be damaged. Seeing Xu Yanyan stare at her, she immediately assumed she was being mocked. "What right do you have to look at me?" she said in annoyance. "Why can't I look at you?" said Xu Yanyan, raising her head proudly. "It's an honor to have this protector look your way." Thus, the two had started fighting with just this. When Wenren he arrived with Yin Hanjiang, Qiu Kongxiu was chasing Xu Yanyan around the mountainside, while Hall Master Ruan was sneaking in an attack every once in a while, yelling, "I'll teach you for taking in such disgusting subordinates. I'll kill you." In this short time, Hall Master Ruan had learned to watch his language. Wenren he nodded in satisfaction. His Xianyuan sect was finally shaping up. "Stop." Wenren he raised his voice with the 7-killing halberd in one hand. The three felt a pressure far surpassing that of a Mahayana stage cultivator and were unable to determine just what level Wenren he was at that moment. They immediately stopped fighting and knelt before him. "Venerable 1, this subordinate," Qiu Kongxiu blurted out first. "This Venerable 1 knows," Wenren he said. "You can stay in the main hall for now. When the task is finished, bring Bailey Qingmiao back to Shangqing sect." "Venerable 1, how about my Hellfire Pavilion?" Qiu Kongxiu started, but then hesitated for a moment and continued, "Never mind, Shi Kongxin can have it." Her current position in Xianyuan sect was a bit awkward. Qiu Kongxiu had been beating Xu Yanyan handily in their battle and was possibly the strongest person in Xianyuan sect aside from Wenren He. But the positions of the Hall Masters and the two protectors were all filled. Qiu Kongxiu glanced over to Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Ruan, racking her brains to consider who should she kill to steal their domain. Hall Master Yuan felt his hair stand on end from her gaze and quickly said, "Venerable One, there were many matters that needed to be handled at the main hall which required cooperating with the other Hall Masters. Hall Master Qiu's brains, temperament, isn't suited to managing it. If you ask me, Hall Master Ruan's tortoise shell pavilion is more suitable. You're quite the schemer, aren't you?" Hall Master Ruan spat. "No need for concern, Wenren," he said. "This Venerable One has already made a decision. Hall Master Qiu has offered great services and can be promoted to Sect Protector, ranking above the 4 Hall Masters." Xu Yanyan's expression froze. She didn't dare to defy Wenren He, so she instead glanced over at Hall Master Yuan, her eyes venomous. If she couldn't be Sect Protector, she could at least be the main Hall Master. Sweat dripped down Hall Master Yuan's face. He could use the excuse that Qiu Kongxiu was not smart enough, but how was he supposed to get past Xu Yanyan? This Venerable One was referring to the position of left protector, Wenren He said. Xu Yanyan and the altar masters all let out a breath. Now that Qiu Kongxiu was raised to the same position as Xu Yanyan, she was pleased enough that her inferiority complex faded somewhat. Yin Hanjiang watched Wenren He without a hint of concern at losing his position. Power and status never mattered to him. The things that Xu Yanyan and the Hall Masters fought over so viciously were things that the Venerable One would toss to him without a thought. Feeling Yin Hanjiang's gaze, Wenren He continued, "Former left protector Yin Hanjiang will now be the deputy sect leader of Xianyuan sect. From now on, his words can be considered as my words." Just as expected. Yin Hanjiang lowered his head calmly. This was the kind of person his Venerable One was. Xu Yanyan furrowed her brows, feeling that something was not right. It was not until Wenren He left for the Hellfire Pavilion with sect leader Yin and Hall Master Miao did she realize what it was. Yin Hanjiang, who used to be at the same position as her, now stood higher, and Qiu Kongxiu was now equal to her, so her position in the sect had actually dropped. She had been initially happy to find out that Qiu Kongxiu had survived, but now. The left and right protectors shared a glance, enmity obvious in each other's eyes. Wenren He didn't care how well his new sect protectors got along with the old one. Ditching Hall Master Miao, whose Qinggong was slower, he flew Yin Hanjiang to Hellfire Pavilion. Upon landing, he asked, "Protector Yin, no, sect leader Yin, you seem to be dispirited as of late. Are you unsatisfied with this Venerable One's arrangements?" Xu Yanyan would have started picking apart what he could have meant by this line, whether or not he was dissatisfied with her or how she should reply. Yin Hanjiang, however, didn't consider any of that and answered honestly. Now that this subordinate stands one step closer to the Venerable One, this subordinate hardly knows how to express his joy, so how can he be unsatisfied? Why do I feel like you've become distanced from me these days? Wenren He looked closely at Yin Hanjiang but saw that his head was bowed down with his face not visible. With some displeasure, Wenren He said, "This Venerable One doesn't like it when you kneel and doesn't like it when you lower your head. This Venerable One doesn't like not being able to see your face." Obediently, Yin Hanjiang raised his head and looked directly at Wenren He. His eyes were filled with complicated emotions. There seemed to be admiration in them, but there were other things mixed in that Wenren He couldn't recognize. "That's better," he said. "You're now the deputy sect leader. Your words and actions represent this Venerable One. Show some spirit." "Understood." Yin Hanjiang's expression gradually became more resolute. His feelings toward his Venerable One would not affect their relationship. The fact that the most important person to Yin Hanjiang was Wenren He hadn't changed. That was enough. Wenren he was very concerned with what would happen between Bailey Qingmiao and Zhongli Qian, so he concealed himself and Yin Hanjiang as they headed to where Bailey Qingmiao was being kept. Bailey Qingmiao had been blindfolded and tied to a wooden bed. Sitting in a chair by the bed was Hall Master Shi. The Hellfire Pavilion was constantly shrouded in yin energy and sunlight couldn't shine directly in it, so it was gloomy even in the middle of the day. Hall Master Shi placed an oil lamp on the desk as he coughed lightly twice. He took out a needle and heated its sharp point over the lamp's flame. "Who are you?" Bailey Qingmiao spoke with slightly trembling voice. Her chest heaved up and down in fear, but she still steadied her voice and said, "Where's my master? What have you done to her? If you harm even a hair on her head, I'll pay you back 10 times. 100 times. Cough, cough, cough." Shi Kongzin broke into a coughing fit before he could speak. After it subsided, he said, "No one would dare to touch her. You should be worrying about yourself right now." With 2 needles in his hands, he pricked the tip of Bailey Qingmiao's middle finger with one, extracting 2 drops of blood. After setting it aside, he brought over the next one, with Zhongli Qian's blood on it, and took off Bailey Qingmiao's blindfold. Opening her eyes, Bailey Qingmiao found herself in a shadowy room with a sickly man sitting beside her. He looked young, most probably in his 20s. His skin was so pale that his fingertips appeared a bit translucent in the lamplight. He wore a thin white single robe with a black overcoat thrown over, its dark brown fur collar making his face look even paler by contrast. His long eyelashes were lowered as he focused on the needle in his hand. Mentally reciting a spell, he rapidly made several hand signs with his free hand at a speed that Bailey Qingmiao had never seen before, such that his movements were just a blur to her. "Set." Shi Kongzin barked, his index and middle finger pointing to the needle. The curse was now complete. Now he would just need to drip both drops of blood into Bailey Qingmiao's eyes, and from then on, no matter where she was, the first thing she would set her sight on would always be Zhongli Qian. "Speaking of which, I've been casting spells for so many years, but this is the first time I've been asked to cast such a strange curse," Shi Kongxiu said as he began dripping the blood. "The Venerable One sure is a mysterious man." He first did her left eye. When moving to her right, his hand suddenly jolted, causing the second drop to miss her eye and slide down her nose. "What's this?" Hall Master Shi raised his emaciated hand, looking it over front and back. "Strange. Why did my hand shake? What did you do to me? What did you put in my eye?" Bailey Qingmiao asked through gritted teeth as she barely managed to hold back her tears. Her tears were for the people who loved her, not for her enemies to see her weakness. Bailey Qingmiao might cry a lot, but she wouldn't do something so pointless at a time like this. Something's not right. Hall Master Shi's eyes fell on Bailey Qingmiao's face and suddenly, he froze. Wenren he who watching from outside, also felt that something was wrong with Shi Kongzin. He quickly flipped through Abusive Love Affair, and found that the words in it were changing rapidly. Originally, on the day of He Wenzao's marriage to the Xiling Pavilion Master, Bailey Qingmiao had escaped confinement with the help of Zhongli Qian and separated from him after giving their names to each other. The night after the wedding, she also ran into Wenren he, who had been looking out for her. Wenren he had sat with her though that torturous night and promised her that he would bring the cowherd and weaver girl stars together. Today just happened to be the wedding day of He Wenzao and Lu Xinyi. Love interest numbers 2 and 3 were not there for Bailey Qingmiao. There was only Shi Kongzin, who was busy putting a curse in her. Wenren he watched as the words on the page became. Shi Kongzin looked at Bailey Qingmiao's tear-stained face and got captivated by her frail yet resolute expression. In the firelight, Bailey Qingmiao's body seemed to be shrouded in a thin layer of divine light. Shi Kongzin's heart was moved. Wenren he. That divine light again. Shi Kongzin could also see the divine light. And this passage had been clearly written for Wenren he before but has now changed to another person. That passage had appeared in Shi Kongzin's mind too. He raised the lamp, closely examined Bailey King Miao's face, then felt her fingers to read her fortune. When he got his answer, he started coughing violently. He coughed so hard it seemed he was about to hack up a lung. Even the sound chilled Bailey King Miao's blood. She thought that the person next to her might drop dead at any second. Wenren he frowned. Yin Hanjiang put on the ghost mask and flashed inside the room. He picked up Shi Kengzin in one hand and hauled him out, leaving Bailey Qing Miao alone and bewildered inside. Venerable One, cough cough cough, Shi Kengzin coughed for ages before he managed to recover. Gasping for breath, he said, "It seems that this subordinate can't act against her." "Why?" "This subordinate cultivates illness. Among the 7 forms of human suffering: birth, old age, illness, death, resentment, separation, and desire. This is a principle that originates from Buddhism, and those who cultivate it must allow their body to be plagued by all kinds of illnesses and ailments to experience the depths of human suffering in order to awaken to the greater Dao. Back there, when I looked at that maiden, I felt the power of a divine being. It felt like she was meant to be the subordinate superior, higher than Hall Master Chu or the Venerable. No, not higher than the Venerable One. When this subordinate looked at her, it felt like, when Hall Master Miao's goo insects look at their queen. It felt like I was possessed, wanting to live and die for her and give up everything for her. Wenren he. In Bailey King Miao's previous life, she was the goddess governing disasters, plagues and wars. The source of Shi Kengzin's Dao. Even if he ascended to godhood later on, he could only be one of her servants. End chapter. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 33, a deviation from the plan. Wenren he wasn't angry. He had long since gotten used to the plot's connivance. It was normal enough that reality, from time to time, needed to conform with the events of the original plot. He was twisting the story's events, trying to defy heaven and change fate, but the original fate still offered resistance. Under these circumstances, it was fully expected that the original story, from time to time, would manifest itself on some originally unrelated character. Then, do you feel loyalty toward Bailey Qingmiao? Wenren he asked. It had suddenly occurred to him that Zhongli Qian was no longer the only choice. Shi Kengzin. Wenren he sized him up carefully. Aside from his sickly complexion, his looks weren't bad. With Shi Kengzin's condition, before he could freely control his sickness qi, anyone who dual cultivated with him would have died from his illnesses, and only ghost cultivators could be around him safely. That was why Wenren he had sent him to Hellfire Pavilion. It was possible that only the female lead would be immune to Shi Kengzin's sickness qi. Didn't that mean that they were suited for each other? Wenren he looked pleasantly at the spare he had chosen for Bailey Qingmiao. Shi Kengzin felt his expectant gaze and shook his head furiously as he said, "Cough, cough, how could this subordinate be? This subordinate is only loyal to the Venerable One." Meaning that since Wenren he was Devil Venerable today, Shi Kengzin was loyal to Wenren he. If tomorrow Shu Yanyan pulled off a coup, Shi Kengzin's loyalty to the Devil Venerable wouldn't waver. He had the same kind of loyalty as everyone else in Xianyuan sect. Wenren he immediately lost interest and waved him off. "Since you can't do anything to her, just leave Bailey Qingmiao for now. Go cast the curse on Zhongli Qian." Shi Kengzin hurried off. He took a glance at Bailey Qingmiao through the window of her room, and shook his head slightly. Deep inside, he did want to help this girl, but the Venerable One had given his orders. In the future, he could help her on some less important matter. Seeing his expression, Wenren he was greatly disappointed and shook his head. He can't even defy this Venerable One's orders and save someone behind my back. Completely undependable. At that time, Hall Master Miao was just arriving. Did the Venerable One consider defying his orders as dependable? In that case, it made sense how Protector Shu had maintained her position. When it came to acting behind Wenren he's back, he, Miao Kaiyuking, really could not hold a candle. Hall Master Miao entered the room, blindfolded Bailey Qing Miao again and fed the goo insect to her. Then he left to go put goo insect in Zhongli Qian next. Throughout the whole process of being cursed by Shi Kongzin and having a parasite placed in him by Hall Master Miao, Zhongli Qian had been awake and aware that they had done something to him. He wasn't afraid though. In fact, and he was a bit relaxed. He would have been anxious if Wenren he use him against the Zhongli clan, or use his reputation in the mortal world to lead scholars astray and set up an evil cult so as to increase his own power base. Neither of those things had happened by now. Zhongli Qian was widely read and had more practical knowledge than Bailey Qing Miao. When the drops of blood were placed into his eyes, he recognized it as a curse for tracking the person whom the blood belonged to, not something that would affect his thoughts at all. When Hall Master Miao forced him to swallow the goo insect, he recognized it as the heart-linking parasite which could link two people's emotions. It was a type of love goo, often used by Miao women to know their husband's feelings. It was said that the Miao had created the heart-linking parasite because Miao women discovered that even though their husbands would fall in love with them under the influence of a love parasite, it wouldn't stop them from sleeping around. Some men made a distinction between love and lust, and could love one woman and be in bed with another at the same time, then act like he didn't know her afterward. In order to completely control their husbands, Miao women had created the heart-linking parasite, so that the moment he felt desire for another woman, she would know. Zhongli Qian recognized that this parasite would also not affect his own thoughts. They were not subject to the queen parasite, and though they were influenced by each other, it went two ways. If one's will was strong, one could avoid being influenced by the other party, and could even suppress the other's emotions. Lord Wenren should be aware that these two things cannot control me, so what is his purpose? Could he possibly want me to track someone for him? Zhongli Qian asked. I have no particular skills in tracking. He could have found an expert in it instead of me. Zhongli Qian was sharp and had been speculating on Wenren He's plans and intentions for these past months. During his time at the Hellfire Pavilion, he had played out multiple wiki games against himself, thinking of countless possibilities, but they were all proven wrong at this point. The Venerable One's decisions are profound and we couldn't possibly guess at them, said Hall Master Shi. Young Master Zhongli should just obey his orders, cough cough cough. Hall Master Miao, having more seniority than Hall Master Shi, knew a bit more. He was aware that Bailey Qing Miao was Wenren He's favored disciple, who had been stolen by Qiu Kongxiu. He also knew what the heart-linking parasite did, and he had just heard Wenren He called Hall Master Shi undependable. Putting the pieces together, he figured that the Venerable One was intending to use Zhongli Qian to dispose of Qiu Kongxiu, so he could take back his disciple. Obviously, he wouldn't tell his conjecture to Zhongli Qian, and left right after completing his task. He had already told Wenren He how to remove the heart-linking parasites, so now he could leave everything else to Wenren He. After the two hall masters left, Bailey Qing Miao struggled out of her ropes. She snuck out of the room and looked carefully around but didn't see anyone in the area. Instead of escaping, she went deeper into the compound in search of Master Kingxiu. Bailey Qing Miao wasn't an idiot. The two people who had come to her cell were much higher level than her, so there was no way a mere nascent soul stage could have escaped on her own. They had to have some scheme and had plans in place in case she tried to escape. Instead of running head-on into a trap, it's better for her to find her master. Master Kingxiu was a wandering immortal, and with her, Bailey Qing Miao would have a much better chance of escaping. Wenren He had expected Bailey Qing Miao to make a break for the exit. There was an illusion array set outside, and if she went that way, she would run into a phantom wall that would lead her to Zhongli Qian's room no matter which way she walked. Somehow, she had outsmarted him. Odd. Was Bailey Qing Miao this perceptive? Wenren He frowned, feeling that somehow somewhere had deviated from his plan. If Bailey Qing Miao went toward the exit, she would be led smoothly to Zhongli Qian. but she was heading deeper into the Hellfire Pavilion instead, which was crawling with ghost cultivators. She'd only taken a few steps when she heard the sound of sobbing. She hurried over and found someone in a red robe and loose hair, crouching in the corner of a room and weeping pitifully. Bailey Qingmiao walked over and placed a hand gently on that person's shoulder, asking, "Miss, were you captured too?" The red-robed person continued to sob, their whole body trembling, as if they'd had their heart broken. Bailey Qingmiao felt sympathy, wondering what awful thing could have happened to this maiden, and became even more anxious about Master King Xiu. They chose me for him. Why me? The red-robed person sobbed. There were so many others who wanted to get closer to Hall Master Ruan. They could have sent them. But me, I didn't want to. What did they make you do? Bailey Qingmiao asked carefully, worried about digging up any trauma. They made me, the person cried so hard they couldn't speak. Slowly, they turned around and lifted their head. They said I was the ugliest, so they made me go kiss Hall Master Ruan. Ah! Bailey Qingmiao couldn't help but let out a yelp when she saw the other person's face. Their eyeballs were dangling from their sockets, the flesh was rotting off and the tongue had maggots crawling around in it. Most importantly, this person seemed to be a man. The red-robed person grabbed Bailey Qingmiao by the arm and crawled toward her. He pointed at his face. I wasn't really unwilling to be with Hall Master Ruan, but he insulted me and said I got my bugs all over him. Look at my cute babies. Do you think they're ugly? See how chubby they are. They're lovely. Arg. Get away from me. Bailey Qingmiao shoved him away with her spiritual energy. Despite using the full strength of a nascent soul cultivator, she only managed to toss him back half a meter. The moonlit frost silk twisted wildly in the air in fear. When coming into contact with one of the red-robed man's bugs, it shuddered and flung the pest off. Bailey Qingmiao ran away as the red-robed man staggered after her, shouting, "How come Hall Master Shi and Hall Master Ruan think I'm ugly? Things were better when Hall Master Qiu was here. Hall Master Qiu liked me and often praised me. I miss her so much. Hey, why do you smell like Hall Master Qiu? Wait up. Don't run away." Bailey Qingmiao didn't know who Hall Master Shi and Hall Master Qiu were, but she did feel bad for Hall Master Ruan. She ran with all her might, her heart in her throat, but she was unable to shake the red-robed man. It was not like she couldn't fight him, but more of she didn't want to. On the verge of desperation, she saw out of her left eye a light streaming out from a room. She rushed in, locking the door behind her. With a hand on her heart, she held her breath, hoping that the other person wouldn't find her. The red-robed man stood outside the door and cocked his head at it for a moment. Sobbing a few times, he said, "This room is for Hall Master Shi's guest. I'm not allowed to disturb him, so I'll go now." Then, he staggered off miserably, missing Hall Master Qiu. Hearing his footsteps grow fainter, Bailey Qingmiao patted her chest, her fear finally fading. She glanced around the room, but her left eye instantly landed on a white-robed young man with a book in his hand. He was also looking at her. Her left eye locked gazes with him, unable to be moved away. Zhongli Jian. Earlier, his heart had been racing in a kind of terror that he hadn't felt for a long time, which he knew was the work of the heart-linking parasite. He was trying to calm his emotions when a girl barged into his room. At that moment, Zhongli Jian could not tear his eyes away from her. Her image seemed to be glued to the front of his eyeballs. Her face felt like it was burned into his sight. Her body let off rays of light, which soon made his eyes ache, yet he couldn't look away. With Bailey Qingmiao's face filling his mind, Zhongli Jian wondered what kind of new torture method this was. Bailey Qingmiao was doing a bit better. Her left eye couldn't see anything but Zhongli Jian's face, but she could move her right eye to check her surroundings. However, it was too uncomfortable to look at different things with both her eyes, causing overlapping images to appear in her vision. When Zhongli Jian moved, Bailey Qingmiao became so nauseous she nearly vomited. Thinking there was nothing to do but cover his eyes, Zhongli Qian took out a piece of cloth and tied it over them. As a cultivator, he could use his spiritual cognition to sense his surroundings, so being blindfolded wouldn't really bother him. His action reminded Bailey Qingmiao, who tore off a strip from one of her sleeves and tied it over her left eye, so that she could only see out of her right eye. She instantly felt much better. With her right eye, she could see Zhongli Qian properly and found that he was an upstanding young man. Seeing him move, she pressed her back against the wall, the moonlit frost silk twirling wildly in the air before her. "Don't move," she cried. "Stay like that. Don't bring any bugs near me." Feeling her fear, Zhongli Qian began reciting poetry in his mind, trying to calm down both himself and Bailey Qingmiao. "Miss, relax," he said with a slight smile. "This is my true form. I'm not going to transform into anything. This one's name is Zhongli Qian. May I have your name?" "Zhongli Qian? Of the Zhongli clan." Bailey Qingmiao did have some general knowledge of the cultivation world. Discovering that she was now feeling calm, she asked, "Are you also being imprisoned here?" "Pretty much." Zhongli Qian's level-headed attitude helped Bailey Qingmiao relax quite a bit. Retrieving her bonded weapon, she greeted him respectfully. "I am Bailey Qingmiao of Shangqing sect. While traveling with my master, we passed by the Ghost Peak and were captured. I don't know where my master has ended up, so I'm currently searching for her. Does young Master Zhongli know what this place is?" "The Hellfire Pavilion in Xianyuan sect," Zhongli Qian answered. His doubts returned. Why would Wenren bind him to this ordinary righteous disciple, who seemed to have no idea what was going on? "Xianyuan sect," Bailey Qingmiao said, now even more puzzled. When she had encountered Wenren before, he was a good senior to her. He and Master Qingxiu had also met. He wouldn't hurt them, would he? Perhaps something had happened to Wenren and the Xianyuan sect now have a new sect leader? No. There was also the possibility that the people in Hellfire Pavilion was acting on their own. Bailey Qingmiao took out the token that Wenren had given her from her storage belt. She had originally planned to never use it, but for the sake of her master, it was worth a shot. Wenren, who was observing in secret, winced when he saw it. He couldn't let Bailey Qingmiao use it to summon him. If he was there, how could Bailey Qingmiao and Zhongli Qian have their private first meeting? Seeing the awkward look on his Venerable One's face, Yin Hanjiang put the ghost mask on. His bearing changed in an instant. He entered the room in a streak of shadow and snatched the token out of Bailey Qingmiao's hand. "Who are you?" Bailey Qingmiao cried, backing up against Zhongli Qian. They could sense Yin Hanjiang's power, and through their linked emotions, they made a decision to fight him together. The masked man ran a finger over the diagram of polis on the token. In a deep voice, he said, "You're not worthy of this." While wearing the ghost mask, Yin Hanjiang didn't need to hide his emotions. He had been suppressing his emotions over the last few days, and only now, while under the mask, could he let them show on his face. For the first time in days, he relaxed a bit. He looked sullenly at Bailey Qingmiao and Zhongli Qian. Thinking back to that phrase, "Love takes you unawares and before you know it, you're deep in its clutches," he felt pang shot through his heart. Were it not for these two, he would never have realized his own heart, and he wouldn't have to bear this kind of agony. Wouldn't it have been better if he had never known? Yin Hanjiang carefully placed the token in the lapel of his robes, near his heart. Without harming either of them, he left and returned to Wenren's side. He took off the mask, revealing his usual expression